The appeal to heaven. Okay, number 9. The appeal to heaven. Also, argument ad colon uh, do volt got mit on. Oh my gosh, it's hilarious. I'm probably gonna be like,
A lot of
if
Latin.
anybody watches this. Yeah.
No, well, I mean, yeah, there's
Manifest
a lot of Latin in this.
Manifest Destiny, American Exceptionalism, or the Special Covenant. An ancient, extremely dangerous fallacy, a diluted argument from ethos. I know we cover this each time, but I have to like do it again. Ethos was the God stuff, right? From the divine.
Mm, was that
Yeah.
Logos?
No, logos was. Let me check.
Because we need to not mix those two up.
Yeah. Ethos, pathos, logos. Okay. Ethos, establishing speakers, credibility or authority, appeal to authority, pathos, appeal to emotion, logos, appeal to reason. Oh, we can't. Oh, we can look at this wrong.
Hmm.
Okay, so we said ethos. So yes, it's a yes. So ethos is we said to appeal to the divine.
Okay.
But what this is saying is appeal to authority. So authority, like that could be ultimate authority, which would be a divine.
Yeah.
Okay. Ew. Okay, good. Yeah, I think that's why we've been. It's like ethos, logos, and pathos. So okay, so just to quickly go through this, um, I'm gonna go through the definition just as clearly as I can. Each one, just so we have it. Ethos establishes the speaker's credibility or authority. This is known as an appeal to authority. So basically, ethos is the focus on the authority of the speaker. And yeah, so pathos appeals to the audience's emotions. This is also known as appeal to emotion. So pathos is like appealing to the emotional component of human beings. So I would
And that was
use
the
that.
second fallacy, right? Number 2. No. That was the first one? No. Which one was the one that feel emotion? Oh, it was number 5.
Yeah, this to me, I think of a lot of like I think pathos is used by a lot of rhetorical. This is rhetorical, or rhetorical. I don't know, but like a lot of speakers who use rhetoric on the right, I feel like you appeals to emotion a lot. So pathos appeals to emotion. Logos appeal to the audience's logic or reason. This is also known as appeals to reason. So logos would be like that to me. I think is like what is socially acceptable as logical. I think is that like it's like that makes sense, right? Kind of the thing.
Okay,
Yeah.
so it's not
Appeal to reason.
because well, I don't want to equivocate logic for sure. So I'm like, well, then wouldn't that make logos reasonable if you're appealing to logic? But you're saying no, it's the assumption of logic.
Right. If you're appealing so that what it says like in very shorthand is appeal to reason. So if like I think it's like if someone's using logos, they're appealing to the idea that this sounds logical, sounds reasonable.
Okay.
That's what I think is that. Yeah, just like that in the appeal to emotion, pathos, it's like you're playing on someone's emotional strings. Like, hey, let's pay attention to your emotions, not logic. And then ethos is like, hey, pay attention to authority, whatever authority that might be. In the U.S., it's I think what's often used there is just like ultimate authority, God.
Gotcha. And the only fallacy that we've read where it talked about being a corrupt argument from logos is the very first one, the a priori argument, where essentially whatever doctrine or whatnot, like let's say the Bible or the Quran, for example, that's correct first. But obviously that's a fallacy. So so I I guess I'm just having trouble understanding. Okay. So if you were to assume the Bible is right first, or the Quran is right first, the Book of Mormon is correct first, then everything following that must be reasonable. Therefore, it's logos. Does that sound right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that sounds right. Yeah, I think it's
Very good.
like falsely using. Yeah, falsely using like. I'm gonna keep that.
I really wish that whatever said uh that it's a false argument from reason or appeal to reason. I wish they used a different word because um the way that you and I are talking about reason is not what that is talking about.
Yeah, yeah, it's very interesting. Well, we'll move. We'll do our best to continue as we go through this because those terms are gonna come up quite a bit. So it's good that we keep reviewing it. I think anyway. Okay. Back to the appeal to heaven. So ancient, extremely dangerous fallacy, a deluded argument from ethos, which is uh, from the appealing to emotions, that of claiming to know the mind of God or history or higher power, who hath allegedly ordered or anointed, uh, who hath allegedly ordered or anointed, supports or approves of one's own country, standpoint, or action, so no further justification is required and no serious challenge is possible. Yeah. Example, God ordered me to kill my children. Or, quote, you need to take away your land since God or scripture or manifest destiny or fate or heaven has given it to us as our own. A private individual who seriously asserts this fallacy risks ending up in a psychiatric ward, but groups or nations who do it are far too often taken seriously. Practiced by those who will not or cannot tell God's will from their own, this vicious and blasphemous fallacy has been the cause of endless bloodshed over history. See also moral superiority and magical thinking. Also applies to deluded negative appeals to heaven. Example, quote, you say that you say that famine and ecological collapse due to climate change are real dangers during the coming century, but I know God wouldn't ever let that happen to us. The opposite of the appeal to heaven is the Jobs comforter fallacy.
That's it. Jobs. I guess we'll get to that one later.
We'll get there. Yeah.
Yeah, and then oh my gosh, there are people that have killed their own children because they did not want to risk their kids not um following God the right way, and so they killed their children as a guaranteed enter to heaven for their children.
Well,
Yeah. So this takes lives from not just from the people that have been killed that they don't believe, but for the people that do believe. In the Book of Mormon, um, I read the whole Book of Mormon, and like in the last couple pages, there is there's this interesting dilemma in Christianity where um is at what point is someone responsible for their decision to accept Jesus as their Lord and Savior in order to get into heaven or not? Like, does a baby who is born but is underdeveloped, do they get into heaven when they die a day later after they're born? And many Christians will be like, well, yeah, because they didn't have the chance to. Like, okay, so where is that line? In Christianity, it's really vague, and a lot of people kind of come up with their own definitions. But in Mormonism, the book makes a clear distinction that at the age of 8 years old, and from that moment exactly, you are now responsible for accepting Jesus as Lord and Savior. But if you die before you turn 8, you are guaranteed into heaven no matter what. this has caused a lot of Mormon children to attempt and succeed in murdering themselves before 8 years old because they want to get into heaven so badly.
Wow.
It's a big problem in Mormonism.
Wow. So crazy.
Mm-hmm.
What I find really interesting, so this is where we can start to like even dive into my own relationship with faith in this one.
Sure.
If like what I find interesting is faith itself, the concept of faith, which to me, you know what, without pontificating, let me go. What is the definition of faith? Define faith. What is faith? Complete trust or confidence in someone or something. Uh, Strong belief in God or the doctrines of religion based on spiritual apprehension rather than proof. That's interesting. Um, Definition.
Remember, I told you a story. I asked a pastor this, and yeah, they said it was partly truth, but there was something in addition to it. And essentially, it was I think part truth. I meant trust. That's what I said. Part trust, but uh, faith takes an additional leap where you believe in the things that cannot be seen. Is the words that he said, which I think is fascinating because um, if we're not using the word faith, trust is believing with reason, whereas the extra part of faith is believing without reason. And and faith, in the context that it's used in religious, is both trust and that extra thing, which are opposites. They are true opposites. Believing with reason versus believing without reason. Those should be opposite things, but the word faith, in the way that they use it, is both of those things, which I just find very deceptive. They are opposites.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I like that kind of depiction of it because it's here's where I kind of like fall into my own. That because actually is helpful because it actually strengthens my direction I'm going into. Um, is that my own relationship with faith, which I agree with the definition, believing without reason, is especially as I'm going and developing my own business right now and doing my absolute best to create a way of being that feels in alignment with who I believe I truly am, not how I was conditioned to be by society or by parents or by upbringing, but who I am at my core. Why I'm on this planet. And the why for me is if you take all the gifts and skills that Alan has accumulated and is continuing to hone, what is the greatest utility that he can provide in his existence on this planet with those gifts and skills? And how am I meant to bring it to the world? The physical, actual, raw, no bullshit application of being able to do that. If like I found that on that journey, as I've just defined it, it's really in my own experience, it's not something that anybody has been able to tell me. It's not something that anyone's been able to prescribe to me. It's not something that anyone has been able to say, Alan, do this in this way. At the end of the day, it it has truly been a battle of uh like taking action, but specifically, am I taking action from a place of where the foundation of the action is fear, or in other words, am I taking action to not go broke, to not fail, to not uh, fall apart, or am I taking action in well, use fear and total faith, which is like I'm taking action not out of fear, but out of the maximum utility and being okay with the risks that I'm taking, despite the fact that I may not know what's going to happen.
If I may, Alan, I believe that that would be trust because you have a reason to believe you've been through these experiences before, and so you have a reason to believe uh, how your business is going to go. I believe that's reasonable.
But the truth is that every day, not every day, that's not true, but very frequently, this process is a process of complete trial and error. And oftentimes, the direction of the business will pivot in really uh, unforeseen, uh, in some ways, like nonsensical ways comparatively to how I used to think about things. So I'll give you a fast example is I have a person I partnered with who they are a tech wizard. They're really good at tech. They're really good at understanding that world. And I am not. I don't want to do it. I don't want to touch it. I'd rather just go do my thing and that's it. And so um, they, in working with me a little bit, realized that I was the real deal. I'm working with them. I'm realizing they're the real deal. So we decided to partner up and run some events uh, to teach a method that I've been developing because I was like, I think the direction I'm going in is business coaching for specifically for a particular uh, type of coach who has an experience based business. So we make this whole event. We put lots of time, energy, and money behind it. Probably about 60 hours of work to get an event to go, and we get 24 people, 24, 27, 27. We get 27 people in a room for this event, which is a really decently sized virtual event, especially for the first one of its kind. First one of its title, first one of its promise. Like, it's a good start. We run the event. The intention of the event is to give massive value to those in attendance, but it's also to convert revenue, to be able to bring people into my coaching program so that I can serve them in a more long-term fashion, not just in just this space, this little event. And it yields zero enrollment into my coaching program. So $0 in revenue, zero enrollments. So we try to make some tweaks, make some changes, and we run it again. We get 7 people in the room for a rerun of it. So a total of 34 people have gone through this process, and not a single person converts at all. Now, the part that was interesting was that even though $0 was converted from the event, placing me in a really challenging financial situation, arguably the most precarious financial situation I've been in my entire life. It felt really, really, really good to run the event. Something in my body, in my heart, whatever you want to call it, there was something that was like, this feels awesome. I love doing this and I want to keep doing it, even though it's giving no monetary return. And based off of anything on the emotional side, or sorry, on the logical side, it is a in completely ass backwards, completely nonsensical business move. It just doesn't make any sense. Why would you continue to do something that doesn't yield you any money? So I was in very strong conflict because I was like, okay, I've attempted this business move twice, believing that it was going to work out, having faith that it was going to. I had no reason to believe it was going to work because I've never seen anybody do it the way I was trying to do it. So I was like, okay, let's give it a shot. Fails both times. So we're getting ready to run another one in January. And I was not getting any of my stuff done towards it because I was like, I just don't see this working again. I have no reason to start this thing up because it's now shown me twice that this doesn't work. And I can't risk putting another 50 hours into something to then get $0 in return. That's just, I can't do it. I'm in a really tough situation. And at the same time, I'm like, but I have, it's not even and, it's but I have no fucking money. So it's like I can't do nothing. And so if I were to act out of fear, if I were to let fear take over in this situation, pack up bags, declare bankruptcy, consolidate debt, go find a job at Starbucks and just get paid an hourly wage and hopefully, not lose my apartment and not lose my way of life that I built. But there's something to like we can talk about fallacies all we want, but there's so much life that happens in between the decisions, and how I am being in between decisions usually dictates what I'm going to do when a decision presents itself. So later on, as I'm being in a state of faith, meaning believing that this is going to work out monetarily, even though I have absolutely zero evidence and zero reason to believe that it will. I have literally nothing. I I decide with a client that I have that lives here in Austin, Texas. I was like, hey, let's go ahead and do an in-person experience with each other, because let's set your goal for 2025. We'll make it an in-person thing. You and your partner can come and we'll do it. So we do it. And I do this in-person experience with this client. Same really great feeling in my body. Same like my body, like, yep, this is good. And it was a little scary because it's in person, not virtual. Virtual, you can hide a little bit. You can't hide anything in person. In person, you're just about as authentic as it gets. And I could just tell the combination of that really good feeling and the fear of not wanting to do it. I was like, oh yeah. I was like, I made the decision. I want to do more of these in-person events. And I said that out loud. And this person said, oh my God, you would be so good at in-person events. I said, I know, I'd love to do it. I said, well, how about this? We haven't gotten to your 2025 goals yet. What if we got a bunch of people together at your house and we did your 2025 goals with you and your partner, but we brought other people along with? And she's like, oh my God, that'd be amazing. And here's what I know from a business standpoint. From a business standpoint, that's actually really good for me. When someone gets in space with me and I have the opportunity to serve people over a long period of time, they become abundantly clear of the skill set that I have. They see the value in it, and it increases the likelihood of me serving more. If I serve more, I make more, etc. It's just the natural cycle. So all of a sudden, completely unrelated to the first situation, which is the online events, there's now this other opportunity pops up to be able to potentially make money in another way. Now, there's still no guarantee. The intention is not to sign any clients from that experience. The intention is to do my absolute best to help people create their goals in 2025. If something comes up from that, great. If something doesn't, there's no guarantee. But what happened is, the part of me that goes, I believe something is going to happen. I believe this is going to work out. I don't know how. I don't know when. I just do not believe that I'm going to fail. I have no reason in front of me. I cannot give you any logical evidence that would show you, Bryce, that it absolutely will. And for me, in this business, in running this business and having it work and having gotten as far as I've gotten, despite the horrible situation, not horrible, but despite the incredibly tight financial situation I'm in, I could not have gotten this far without that way of being. Quite literally, it's been my ability to believe in that which I have no reason to believe in is what has gotten me this far. And I guarantee that if I am to succeed, it will also be the thing that helps me to succeed. It'll be the reason why, if one day in 5 years I'm a multimillionaire and Alan's known for this and known for that and whatever, this thing I just described to you will be the reason it happened. So I find this fallacy interesting because it's like the appeal to God, and we went on a bit of a tangent on faith, but what came up for me was, I'm really freaking convicted in the idea that faith is what is allowing me to actually move forward. And yet I also see, it's interesting, I see the big danger that this fallacy does in the name of faith, in the name of just chalking it up to God, in the name of chalking it up to that which is unseen, but it's written in a book somewhere. So therefore, follow the rules.
Yeah.
Um,
So
that's what came up
really quick. Yeah. so really quick, uh, have you done multiple things in life where um you weren't sure how it was going to play out, but you did it, and then sometimes you weren't successful, but then other times you were successful, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
Uh, so um, is it okay if I challenge you on this
Yeah,
a little
go
bit?
for it. Challenge, challenge.
Cool, cool. So, and by the way, I love your stories. I think they're very powerful. But we also want to make sure we are not using any fallacies in the story to proclaim the rest of it. The one I'm specifically pointing to is just because your story is powerful, just because it's a great story, doesn't necessarily mean it's true. I want to make sure we're avoiding the appeal to emotion fallacy.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
just
Yeah, I'm
just
not.
just keeping that in mind. Yeah, yeah.
The
So
only
I'm not
thing, the
saying
only
it's
thing that I'm
wrong for
claiming,
that. I'm just saying it's
yeah,
not
the
right.
only thing that I'm claiming to be, yeah, I want to be clear, and I hope it didn't come through this way. I am not claiming that anything is true other than like this has my the only thing I'm claiming is that by believing in things that aren't there, it has gotten me through many situations, and it has helped me to make decisions that have ultimately helped my business, not harmed it. But that doesn't mean that that's what everybody else should do. It doesn't mean that's how business should be run. Um, it's just it's the what I'm finding for me in this particular fallacy and around this thing. It's what I'm saying is what's coming up for me is there is real world progress in my life personally that if I didn't have some sort of frankly blind faith um in the good happening, even though there's zero reason to believe it, to battle
Yeah.
the doubt that I have, I wouldn't be where I am.
I'm gonna challenge you on this.
Yeah, go for it.
Um, from your proclamation that you have tried things before and they didn't work, and you tried things before and they did work, is reasonable. And it's actually what you're describing is the scientific method, which would be the opposite of faith. And I'm not trying to take away anything from your story, but you doing things, you trying these things, not knowing if they're going to work or not, I I would not call that faith, and I believe equivocation is happening right now. The way you're describing faith is the scientific method, which is yeah. So yeah, trust is believing with reason, and faith. If we're not using the way that religious organizations will use faith, if we're all okay with that, saying that faith is not trusting with reason and without reason, if we could just like cut that equivocation and just say trust is believing with reason and faith is believing without reason, right? Are we okay doing that?
Yeah, I'm totally
Okay.
down for that. Yeah, that's
Okay.
reasonable.
Just so there's no equivocation, I just want to you know, put it in there. Um, so faith, um, not only have I seen been used in believing without reason, but in despite of reason to the contrary. I've also
Yeah,
seen it,
totally.
and um, so uh, yeah, Alan, when you are doing these events, because I've done this before. We've both been district managers and we've run our own businesses before, and I'm assuming a lot of your experience comes from what we've done before, and you've been applying that knowledge as well. Um, all of that is reasonable. Trying new things, experimenting is what you're doing. You have a hypothesis. This is what I'm going to do, and if it works one way, it's going to happen like this, and if it doesn't, it's going to happen like this. And then you do the events. That's your experiment, and then you get the conclusion, and then you're like, okay, based off of this conclusion, I need to do something else. I need to change a variable. to get a different outcome. You don't just do the same thing over and over again expecting a different result.
That's correct.
Right. Yeah, that would be literally insanity. Um, yeah, yeah. No, you are running scientific experiments. Everyone does science and they don't know it. I want to make sure that equivocation with faith, I believe, is a really big deal because they are true opposites. Doing things with reason versus without reason. Um, and you are not doing that. Faith in the purest context that I've seen it, doing something without reason would be using God of the Gaps, for example. I don't have a reason to believe this, but I'm just going to believe it anyway. Um, I'm not going to do any testing. I'm not going to try to figure out if it's true. I'm not going to try to falsify it. I'm just going to believe no matter what, despite evidence to the contrary, if any exists. Fuck it, I believe it. That's not what you're doing. You are running reasonable scientific experiments to come to a conclusion. By the way, everyone who's listening, you don't need to be a scientist to do science. You just need to follow the scientific method. As long as you do that, you can do science. And everybody does it every day. So, yeah, Alan, your story is very powerful, and I want you to keep that. But I think you are absolutely equivocating faith in the story you shared. I believe you're using the scientific method.
It's interesting. It doesn't. So I hear what you're saying, and I logically understand what you're saying. In the experience that I've had, it definitely doesn't feel that way at all. Um,
I believe you have this emotional connection to the word faith. Faith, I don't see as a brag. I think believing things without reason is unreasonable by definition.
yeah. So yes, but if we're looking at it from just the definition of space, the place that I have challenge with is,
Mm,
or where I'm getting hung up. Let's say that's another way to put it. Where I'm getting hung up is, um, in terms of the tool that I am using in order to overcome the amount of doubt and fear that I experience on a daily basis, which would otherwise cripple my efforts to create what I'm trying to create. Oftentimes, what happens is, with the amount of doubt and fear that I'm experiencing,
mhm.
all of the reasons that I'm being given are reasons why this won't work, because the fear is so massive.
Well,
And
fear would be appeal to emotion, so that wouldn't be a reason. But you do have a reason that it would work because you've done this in the past and it has worked sometimes. But that's reason enough to try new things. That's what experiments are.
I've
And
never, I've
no,
never,
what?
I've never ran, I've never ran my own coaching. Yes. In Cutco, we ran a business. However, in that
Yeah,
business, there were scripts, there were structure, there was all this stuff that we did not have to control. The ultimate role
sure.
that we had as managers was influence and sales. If we were good at influence and we were good at sales, then you can be a successful manager in Cutco. But
Hmm.
in the sense of, truly in this instance, like running a business, there is no vector connect. There is no customer service that I can call. There is no manager I can call. This
Hmm.
is the revenue is made because I put an event together. It's like there's I can very confidently say that even though running a district office was difficult, it was at that time, and I can still mark to this day, it was one of the most difficult things I've ever done. It was not as much running a business as I am running a business today.
Yeah.
And
you have the whole structure of the vector behind it. All I'm saying, Alan, because I feel like that your subconscious thinks I'm attacking it right now, and I'm not. I just believe that equivocation is happening with faith. I believe that what you're doing is reasonable, because you have, uh, from your own admission in this call, you have said that you've done things that you didn't know would work, and they did work, and then sometimes you did it and it didn't work. That's
right.
science. That's science. That is science. That is not faith. And that is the reason to do it again. That's why you do it.
But the thing,
It's
the thing that I'm
reasonable.
getting,
Okay, go ahead.
yeah, but like, dude, like the thing that I'm getting hung up on is this is like, and maybe what's happening here is there's multiple equivocations happening in my experience of, and that could be happening. So I can see to the fact that there might be, just like how in the beginning of this call you said a lot of fallacies. There are fallacies that use multiple fallacies in one thing, and that's what makes them so dangerous. What might be happening is
There's a lot of fallacies that happen in your day to day life that you cannot correctly describe without using multiple fallacies. So, unfortunately, there's a lot of things that like Trump will say that he could get away with because he's not committing just one fallacy in a specific sentence. It's multiple, and in order to debunk it, it takes so much language to do it. And so those things happen to ourselves in our day to day lives. And so studying all of these fallacies help us be like, oh, what the fallacy I'm doing right now is this and this and this. In a new way that you may not have discovered was fallacious before.
yes.
So yeah.
I think
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you there.
No, you're good. You're good. You're good. I think where I might be getting stuck then is on the definition of actually reasonable. Because if you were to
Mhm.
look at, as an example, the measure, if you look at my financial picture in this moment, it is
Mhm.
not reasonable to continue running this business in my definition of it, of the word reasonable. I think anybody
This is
would
big.
look at, yeah,
Go ahead. Go ahead. Well, I was just gonna say this is big because logic is the science of reason. So we need to know what is reason. We have we've talked about this on the previous call. What is reasonable? Because there's the rest of this list is all unreasonable, the nationalist logical fallacies. So last week we talked about the three laws of logic, and then also a tool we can use to come to a logical conclusion, which was reductio ad absurdum. And that is if a premise
like that sounds like a, what do you call it? It sounds like a Harry Potter spell.
yes, yeah, it's Latin. Um, but essentially, if the premise is true, then it must also be true in its most extreme example. And so I know a lot of people are not fans of Elon Musk right now, but like I think there's good things he's done and some really stupid things he's done. But Elon Musk, I think I was watching an interview and they were like, "And how much money did you put into this company?" And he's like, oh, like that's a big one." And she's like, "Don't tell me you don't know." He's like, "No, I know. It's 55 million." And she's like, "Of your own money?" And he's like, "Yeah." And I wasn't sure it was gonna work. Um, that's not unreasonable because we know that that is the thing that happens. And you need to put investment into things to see if they work out. That is reasonable. That's the experiment. Um, so, uh, so, and I'm using reductio ad absurdum here because your business is not a $55 million investment. So it's still true in the most extreme example. If the premise that what you're doing right now is a scientific experiment to see if it works or not, on your scale and must also be true in the most extreme scale, which would be the richest person on earth, which is Elon Musk. He does the same thing, and it's the same thing. The premise is still true. The most extreme example, therefore, it is reasonable. Um, you have evidence to support it. Just so that maybe it would help if we cover true examples of faith that you and I can both agree on are faith, and then see, does that follow to
Yeah, I'm open to that.
okay. So you and I can both agree that like God of the Gaps would be faith. I'm assuming so. That I think that's faith, right?
Yeah, well, and to be clear, like this is interesting. There's when you say there's equivocation, I'm like, okay, now I'm beginning to like really think about how I'm thinking about all these words and how I've what like this is interesting. What definition I've accepted these certain like connecting to these words because
mhm.
because for me, what would them what would this be? Okay, so this is interesting. So here's if I weren't to be really hypercritical of my word choice and I were to just be more relaxed, how I would describe faith is the antithesis of fear. It's to me it'd be acting out of love, not out of fear. Is what to me is what faith is. And
That's a fallacy. Yeah. Oh fuck, I forget which one it is, but it's the opposite. It's because one is like appeal to emotion, and then the other is doing it in despite of the emotion. I think is that looking at number 5. Um, the follow your heart, and then I believe it says the opposite of this fallacy is the chosen emotion fallacy. In which one falsely claims complete or and most reliable prior voluntary control over one's own autonomic gut level affective reactions. Um, Closely related, if not identical, to this last. Fuck, I'm awful at reading. In the ancient fallacy of ageism, falsely claiming that one is capable of objective reasoning and judgment without emotion, claiming for one's self viewpoint, disinterested objectivity, or pretending to place oneself far above all of our personal feelings and temptations or bias. See also mortification. So, yeah, and by again, I still believe that what you're doing is, and when I say believe, fuck, maybe I think I'm actually equivocating believe. Um, I
this is a good call, dude. Let's keep this going.
yeah. All right, let's define belief versus reasonable, because reason is something that must require evidence, whereas belief, um, in the colloquial sense, is I am convinced of something, right? But that may not that conviction may not be necessarily reasonable. Um, and so and sometimes a lot of belief is part of faith, the definition that you and I have accepted. So so I don't want to fuck. I think the yeah, belief is definitely a word that's often equivocated between a reasonable conclusion and faith. So I yeah, whenever I either hear from scientists or talk to scientists myself, they do not use the word belief. I think that's more on akin to faith. Um, they will say things like, "So this and this, therefore the reasonable conclusion is this," and it's pretty absolute. because they're using the language and discussion of logic rather than not. Uh, but sorry, I was getting to the the doing something despite having fear of it. Because people would not do something because of the fear, whereas just doing something because you have fear is also a fallacy. Um, Having fear or not, or doing it despite of the fear, is both are unreasonable. It should be because of reason. But I still believe that you have reason to do what uh, you're doing with your business. I believe your business is incredibly reasonable, um, and I think it is good to brag about not letting fear stop you. But just doing something because you're afraid of it, and that's the only reason, is on. Uh, I'm fear of oh, what am I fear of? No, fuck. I have an unreasonable fear of dogs, but I know it's unreasonable because they're lovely. Um, but what? Space. I'm afraid of being in a vacuum because I know I would just die instantly. I have reason to believe that I would die instantly in a vacuum. Um, and because I'm afraid of being in that situation, does not mean I do that. So that would be the opposite of the appeal to emotion. The despite the emotion, I'm gonna do it anyway. You know, but I do agree that you should do something because it's reasonable, and if you are afraid of it, it is a brag to say, I'm going to do this because I have a reason to believe that it's correct, despite me being afraid of it uh, turning out badly. I know that if I never take the chance, that I'm going to miss. You miss every shot you don't take, and that's a reasonable conclusion to take the shot in anything you do. Um, and yeah, I would not call that belief or faith. In the colloquial usage, sure. If you're talking to an audience that is not talking what we're talking about, yeah, sure, you get away with that, and like they'll get the message. But if we're getting really down to like the meat of it, and we need to make sure that you and I are not equivocating, um, no, it's you actually have reason to do that. It's a good idea. It's not unreasonable. Faith is believing without reason or despite reason to the contrary, which I believe is the most dishonest position it's possible to have. I use believe again. But
Yeah. What's coming through for me as you're sharing, and it's actually kind of breaking my brain a little bit in a good way, is I think what I'm noticing from your shares of my um around this is that I think I've been accepting. So Tony Robbins talked about beliefs and limiting belief systems, etc. And so I think it's actually really good for us to at some point dive into just the word belief. Um, I
yeah,
think it's coming up a lot even in this moment. But I think, without knowing the proper definitions, I'm piggybacking strictly off on what I see in economy without knowing the definition behind it.
well, really quick, if other people are using it, they're using it in the colloquial sense, where it can have multiple meanings. So just, like if somebody gives a talk on energy, you and I know that that word is probably the most equivocated word like ever. And you can make energy mean whatever the fuck you want it to mean, but because of that, there's another fallacy called argumentum ad mysterium that has this you believe it because it's mysterious and it has this like extra power to it that you don't quite understand, and therefore it must have some reason to believe it. Um, which is that's the fallacy. But so when you use energy or belief when you're talking to an audience like Tony Robbins is, um, he will get that message across to a big audience. And I think he maybe not deliberately, but the equivocation is happening to where in a positive sense, where it's causing a lot of people to make big, impactful decisions to their lives for good reason. Um, but it is technically being applied fallaciously. And as you and I have discussed before, just because we might use a fallacy to get a positive desired outcome does not mean it's uh, uh, inherently bad. Because sometimes the fallacy um, is more productive than uh, than the amount of language that it takes to do it logically. If I could just go up to somebody and be like, "Hey, you have such good energy. I fucking love it. Let's do a thing," rather than, "Hey, I get this very positive impression from you." Um, that makes me feel dopamine. Like there there is power in using colloquial language effectively. So like I'm saying for public use, it's fine to throw on the word belief and faith and energy. But if you and I right now are trying to be as deliberate as possible with our language, it's also important to not equivocate how Tony Robbins uses the word belief and faith and energy with how we are discussing it right now in incredibly literal terms.
Yeah.
So
So I
hope that was there. Okay.
No, it's good. It's what I'm so yeah. What I'm gonna do is I think you and I are on the same page about Tony. I think that I don't think there are many people on the planet who have been as um studious with their usage of concepts and language um for good than Tony, which is why I use him often as a example because it's like it's like no one can be perfect. But he's like, so it's like for me, it's like he's just done a lot of work. So borrowing some of his language in this situation, what this is bringing up for me, this discussion is bringing up is I'm realizing I think I've been operating from a belief system or a system of beliefs that revolves around the idea that I'm like essentially that I'm stupid. Like I don't know what I'm doing or I don't know what I'm talking about. Because I think you're right. Like wow, this is kind of breaking my brain a little bit, dude.
It's every week. Every on Tuesday, your brain's gonna break a little bit or a lot.
Well, yeah, but it's like I think I've been telling myself a story that I don't know. I think I've been telling myself a story in some way, shape, or form that I don't know what I'm doing, or I'm not as intelligent as I am, or whatever. Um, and therefore, the only reasoning for my actions have to be of faith and not of reason because I'm too stupid to make decisions um, that are good decisions. And I think that's what this is poking at right now.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, your story still works. I just think you're equivocating. Like, your story's still powerful, and you're doing the right thing. It's just, it's not faith by definition. It's reasonable. It's not unreasonable.
Right. But to me, it's like you have to hear the language that I was saying, right? Like I said,
Yes.
I have
I
no
was doing it,
reason
but
to.
despite the reason, and like, well, yes, there are risk factors, but in the same way that if I go ask out a girl that I'm friends with, there's a risk I could stop being friends with her if she doesn't want any romance. or even worse, she could just say "ew." That's the worst, right? So, there is reason to be afraid to do it. But if you never do it, then I'll you'll be single forever, right? So so that's still reasonable to do. It's the colloquial use of the word faith that the story can still come across. But it is important to recognize it's not absence of reason. It's reason.
Yeah, well, that's the thing is what I'm speaking to now is less about the story that I told, and it's more about what I'm noticing
Mm-hmm.
as a system, like a full on, like
Belief system.
full on belief, but not even belief system, dude. Like, it's actually bigger than that. It's so I can't remember. There's a guy named Bob Proctor, which I think you would absolutely hate. Um, he's very much into like law of attraction, energy, like mutual resonant frequency, tapping into frequency. Like he very much goes in that realm, and so I think there
Yeah.
you would probably very much dislike what he talks about. But
I mean, look, if placebo makes someone happy, go ahead. But like, if you're taking that placebo and then you're like, okay, but the placebo the thing I'm talking about that made the placebo happen is real. And you're like, no, it's like that can be taken to an extreme to where it hurts people, and that's why it's bad. But yeah, I mean, if you want to throw around energy, you know, go ahead. The thing with frequencies makes no fucking sense. For frequencies is measurement per unit time. So if you use the term frequency without saying frequency of what substance, it's completely meaningless. Um, in our day to day lives, we use two different kinds of frequency medium, and that's sound and light. It's either through air or it's a frequency of photons per second that creates what we see as far as color goes. So if it's not sound or light, then they are talking about magic. It's not that there's no such thing as a frequency without substance. And I want to be very specific, sound and light. Anyway, sorry, that's a whole other rant.
You're good.
But
You're good.
yeah.
So what that is, but one thing that he talked about that is much more, the vast majority of what he talks about is something that I believe in. You'd be like, no, guys, this guy's bullshit. And is using all these fallacies. But there's one thing he talks about that actually is really relating to this moment. So essentially there's belief, which is like a small unit. There's belief systems, which is a little bit of a larger unit because you're the collection of beliefs. But then he described something as a paradigm. And essentially, a paradigm is like it's a collection of belief systems. It's basically like a paradigm in his definition is like the big, massive. Like when someone says you just broke my reality, it would actually be more accurate to say you've shifted my paradigm. In his definition of it.
Okay.
And so
you're using this to describe how you're feeling right now.
yeah, it's like
Okay.
I'm really noticing like what we're talking about here in terms of reasonable, like being reasonable, faith based, etc. Like all this stuff. I'm like, dude, I think what this is poking at is a paradigm, like a full on like depiction of reality that I've created, where I'm an idiot. I don't have agency. I'm not smart. Um, I'm yeah, I'm not smart. Therefore, I have no reason for what I'm doing. Therefore, it must be just faith that's getting me through this because there's no way that I, Alan the idiot, could be doing anything intelligent.
Yeah, you're
And
selling yourself short.
yeah, and I'm really seeing that right now. Because like as you're talking about this, I'm like reflecting, like, do I have reason? And it's interesting. My mind is wanting to. So how you can tell you've been, and again, we're really going to need to define belief at some point. But how you can tell you're
Hard to find it. I mean, like, you and I define it, like in the very like absolute sense. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think the way that you and I should use it, which should be more akin to faith, where you believe it despite reasonability. Uh, so I would say if we are convinced of something, we can say convinced, and that you should have reason for that conviction. Technically, colloquially, conviction and belief are kind of like synonyms. But like it for the sake of our conversations, just so we are not equivocating, we could say belief is faith based, where conviction is not. And we need to have reason behind the conviction. Because we don't want to equivocate conviction either. Because if you just want to believe something to have the right closure to it, like the last one, you don't want to equivocate conviction either. So when we come to a conclusion, we should say, this is the reason why I'm convinced this is the case.
Okay. So instead of saying belief, that's what we're saying.
Yeah, I mean, just for the sake of our conversation, I think it's fine.
Okay.
Yeah. But I just think the word faith, the way that it's defined in the colloquial sense, is believing with or without reason, which are absolute opposites.
Yeah.
Like that one's bad.
Yeah.
That can make you do whatever the fuck.
Yeah. To me, what I'm. Oh man. So here, whenever I've had so I'll kind of, I'm gonna speak again more relaxed, just because the point I think is more important.
Yeah, sure. More colloquially.
Yeah, I'm gonna speak more colloquially, because I think the point is more important than the exact speech. Whenever I've had instances in my life where a belief is changed, shifted, moved, etc., one of my indicators of knowing of whether or not I that actually occurred, like one of my pieces of evidence with myself, hey, was a belief changed, is if it is difficult to think along the um if it's difficult to think along the for the guidelines of the new belief versus the old belief, because in the brain, as there are neural pathways that are developed, it's like if I have a neural pathway that has been practiced over and over and over again, and one that has absolutely no recognition whatsoever, the brain has a tendency to just go right to the one that's been practiced over and over again versus have difficulty going to one that's never been practiced again. So, or never been practiced before. And so what I'm noticing is, like, in this moment, I'm having this kind of like paradigm shift, holy shit moment of like, wow, I think I have been walking around believing I'm stupid, believing I'm incapable, believing like choosing to look at the world from the lens of Alan's dumb, Alan's incapable, therefore the only way he could be doing anything good is through faith. Which is, and I'm so like, well, wait, hang on a second. Like, from what Bryce is saying, like, your business is reasonable. You have reason to do what you're doing. You've done this before. I'm like, no, you're right. Actually, there's a lot of evidence that has shown me that what I'm doing will work, and that it will be. And I'm taking action based off of that evidence rather than based off of the lack of evidence or the evidence that would support, an outcome not happening. And so, as I'm sitting here being like, okay, let me start to think about all of the reason that I have for doing things the way that I'm doing it. Because, like, let's try to think if I am to believe that I'm doing everything I'm doing is reasonable, then let me try to think of all the reasons that I have actually accumulated that are informing me to make the decisions I'm making. And it's not coming immediately. It's coming very difficult. It's like, I'm like, ooh, wow. I can tell there's resistance in my brain to identifying all those pieces of evidence clearly. Whereas it is very easy for what's very simple I can tell in my mind is like, if I'm sitting here to go, oh, I just don't know because I'm dumb. that's insanely easy, insanely like simple for me to do.
Yeah,
And
which is the big brain little brain fallacy. But anyways, well,
yeah,
part of it.
got it. Got it. So I'm just noticing a full on like, yeah, I'm just having a moment, bro. Like this is a big
Oh yeah,
big thing. Big thing. Whoa.
yeah. You don't have to change your story. You just stop using faith. It's unreasonable by definition.
Yeah.
I mean, if you want to use it colloquially, go ahead. I'm sure that
Well,
resonates
no,
well in Texas, but yeah.
no, but like, here's the truth, man. But one of the things there's a story that Tony tells, and I love the story. It's rather not the story, but the lesson from it. He talks about essentially the process of him and his family growing up with his parents, and how now he loves his mother passed away, but he loved his mother, he loved his family, he was appreciative of them. He found a way to be grateful for his entire childhood, no matter how painful, challenging, or difficult it was. And he says this little tidbit after describing it, after he tells the whole story, and the whole room is very engaged in this idea, that he has derived gratitude from his upbringing rather than disdain,
Mhm.
um, and seeing all the benefit that has brought his life as a result. He says this line. He goes, "I'm not telling you not to blame people in your life. What I'm saying is blame elegantly, blame intelligently." And what he says is, if you're going to blame them for all the bad stuff, blame them for good things. But essentially, what he's inviting the room into is, hey, look for different evidence. Like your brain will find evidence to whatever it wants to find evidence for. So don't overvalue the evidence that your brain is finding, because you are being fearful and you're over validating your emotion of fear, therefore over validating the evidence that is being highlighted by fear.
Oh, the part
Instead,
where he said that you'll find evidence for whatever you're looking for. Are those his exact words, or are you
yeah,
kind of like paraphrasing?
paraphrasing.
Okay, okay, because maybe he did say exactly that, or not, but according to the second law of logic, that's impossible. There is no evidence. There are no whatever evidence can lead you to whatever. Evidence is defined as a fact that indicates, and there are no alternative facts. And so, if that is the word he used, evidence, he's equivocating evidence. But maybe you use a different word. Maybe you use
He may
something
have,
different.
yeah,
Okay.
he may have. So, or he may have been using it. He may have been using it in a colloquial sense, because
Right.
so many people will look at uh, they'll look at information that is
Yeah.
derived from fear, and because of the strength of the emotion in their body, they validate the strength of the emotion as like, this is evidence. How do I know? I'm feeling strong emotions.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah, and
uh,
like, no, that's appeal to emotion.
yes. But what I really appreciate about what I have always appreciated about that perspective is that he he wasn't like, Tony doesn't really say, like, ever. He doesn't really say just have faith. Like, that's never his position.
Right. He does not say that.
No, his position is, has been and is often, not is often, it has been and is, find evidence.
Yeah.
That's always where he goes. And so it's like I like the idea of upgrading
Well,
or updating my software, if you will, to not use the word faith, but instead to talk about finding supportive evidence. Like, that to me feels
yeah,
better.
that's a big improvement. However, you are still susceptible to confirmation bias. The thing that you want to search for is evidence to the contrary of the hypothesis. So if your hypothesis is Alan is stupid and dumb and can't make reasonable decisions, okay, that's technically falsifiable. And if you can't think of a single thing that you've done reasonable, then the hypothesis holds true. But as soon as you come up with one moment that you've been reasonable, your hypothesis is false. And that's how science works. Is you never accept a hypothesis as true. You just simply fail to reject one. And so, but when the ones who are rejected, those are absolutes in the logical sense. You can prove it negative absolutely. So yeah, the narrative that Alan is stupid and he does things because he's stupid and sometimes they work out because he's not smart enough to just figure it out. It's a null hypothesis and you figured it out. Falsified. Wow. Boom.
Boom. Falsified. Boom. Wow, that's literally breaking my brain. I'm gonna literally just be sitting on that all day. That's wild.
If you only look for things that confirm the bias, then you will end up believing whatever the fuck. Because what you believed before was you believe the hypothesis. The hypothesis didn't change. You didn't look for things to falsify it. The Alan is stupid, he can't make decisions, and he just goes on faith. And if you only look for reasons to support the hypothesis, any hypothesis, then all hypotheses are true. And they're not. It's unreasonable. It's confirmation bias. Alan, pick a fruit. Pick a random fruit.
Strawberry.
Strawberry? All right. I believe strawberries are divine and they're from God because, dude, strawberry shortcake was like the biggest, like, you know, she was like Hello Kitty, but like she's strawberry. She's better than that. You can eat it. And strawberries are that's the best flavor ice cream. You got your vanilla and your chocolate, but strawberry is the one that's sweet. And I feel slightly healthier doing that than having the vanilla and or the chocolate. You got strawberry milk shakes; those are way better. Dude, like strawberries. If God wasn't real, there wouldn't be strawberries, and because strawberries rule my life, I'm convinced that a God exists, and I'm only going to look for a reason to support this. Like you can do this with literally anything, and you will believe whatever the fuck.
Yeah.
Someone once said bananas, and I said penises look like bananas, and therefore God is bananas. And and penises are great. So, and that's why. So, anyways, yeah. So, but whatever the fuck, literally, whatever the fuck will convince you is true if you only use confirmation bias. The scientific method requires you to have a hypothesis and for you to try to falsify it. And when you falsify it, you are learning something new. And I think a lot of people are still reluctant to challenge their beliefs rather than I have a belief and I'm just gonna go with it. And I'm just gonna look for things that support it. And that's unreasonable by definition.
Wow. A lot to chew on.
That was what?
A lot to chew on.
Oh, a lot to chew on. Cool. By the way, this isn't Appeal to Heaven. we got so off track.
We did get so off track, but it was really good though. I'm happy we did because it. Yeah, I want to read Appeal to Heaven one more time just so we can like wrap up with like the intention of the time.
Yeah, because all of this is I'm gonna make an episode per fallacy. So everything we talked about is gonna be in the Appeal to Heaven one, and we should not talk about Appeal to Heaven very much.
Oh, and just a little. Oh yeah, we'll close it with just reading it and then saying any last minute thoughts we have, and we'll wrap it up. So the appeal to heaven, also argument ad column, du volt, Gott mit uns, manifest destiny, American exceptionalism, or the special covenant. An ancient, extremely dangerous fallacy, a diluted argument from ethos, so from emotional claim or emotional appeal, that of claiming to know the mind of God or history or a higher power, who has allegedly ordered or anointed, supports or approves of one's own country, standpoint, or action, so no further justification is required and no serious challenge is possible. Example, quote, God ordered me to kill my children, or quote, we need to take away your land since God or scripture, manifest destiny or fate or heaven has given it to us as our own, end quote. A private individual who seriously asserts the fallacy risks ending up in a psychiatric ward, but groups or nations who do it are far too often taken seriously. Practiced by those who will not or cannot tell God's will from their own, this vicious and blasphemous fallacy has been the cause of endless bloodshed over history. See also moral superiority and magical thinking. Also applies to diluted negative appeals to heaven. Example, quote, you say that famine and ecological collapse due to climate change are real dangers during the coming century, but I know God wouldn't ever let that happen to us. The opposite of the appeal to heaven is the jobs comforter fallacy. Any final thoughts on this one?
Yeah, the part of the last one that I want to mention was like there are a lot of conservative people that will use that fallacy of the climate change one where they're like, yeah, well, we know we're destroying the environment, but like God's gonna save us. Like there's no way he's gonna let the earth go on fire. So like we're good. Like that's really dangerous.
Comma, we're good.
Yeah.
Comma, we're good. That's hilarious.
Yeah.
No, I totally hear that. Yeah, this one to me, it's yeah, I see it used really often as a way to um not, if, I think a lot of these, if I'm being honest, I think a lot of these, and this one feels like it's a really big proponent of this. It's like just excuses not to think.
Yep.
It's
For
like,
sure.
yeah, I don't want to think that hard. So and whatever that means, right? Like think that hard. But like I don't, or another way to, maybe I don't want the previous way of thinking, my previous way of thinking challenged. So I'd prefer to just use something to avoid my previous way of thinking being challenged.
Mhm. I want to bring faith back into this one because the tactic that they use, and again, I don't think they do this intentionally. I don't think this is maliciously, but this is the outcome that they use. A lot of preachers will say will equivocate faith with trust, or they'll use the colloquial definition where it's believing with or without reason. And you know what? They'll only really like use examples of reason a lot of the time, and then they're like, and therefore we should do things without reason. Is like essentially what they're getting at. But sometimes they'll tell a story where like they believe in God and God told them this thing, and then it ended up being true, and that isn't quite faith. That's more confirmation bias, and sometimes that's placebo. Um, so uh, placebos like and confirmation bias are like they're like twins. They go together because a lot of times they cause each other to happen. Like if I take a placebo, if I eat this new organic food, and I'm like, oh, this is good for me. And then I think it is, and then I start my brain is attached to the idea that my life is now healthier. Um, it will look for all of the reasons that I'm feeling better, and then dismiss all of the reasons that I'm not. Like I have a hangnail or something, and they're like, well, that's different. So uh, yeah, that's placebo effect confirmation bias. But um, sorry, that's not appeal to heaven. But anyways, yeah, that I've seen oh, my point was that because faith carries the equivocation of believing with or without reason in the colloquial sense, a lot of people will wear the faith badge as a sign of strength that I'm gonna believe without reason or even despite reason the contrary. And that makes me more powerful, more closer to God if I believe despite evidence to the contrary. And that's why there are younger creationists, because they know there's evidence to the contrary. But I think that they believe that there are no exclusive facts. They believe there are alternative facts, like we were talking about last week.
Yeah.
The the paradoxes, right? Um, yeah. So and man, it really just stops critical thinking. Um, so yeah, and that's all appeal to heaven. And so I'm glad we tackled faith today. Because I don't think it's a badge of honor. I think it's the most dishonest position it's possible to have. Believing without reason and despite reason to the contrary, you're how are you not lying to yourself? Isn't that not the definition of lying to yourself? How could you be more dishonest?
Yeah. Well, good. This is a good one, Bryce. This is a really good one.
Awesome. I'm glad. Next week, oh my god, your world's gonna be shattered in a good way.
I hope so, dude. This is yeah. I'm really appreciative of these calls. I'm gonna hop back to the day. Again love and appreciate these conversations. Thank you for having them with me. They're incredibly valuable and helpful to my life. Just as is your presence in my life. So thank you.
Oh my gosh, you're gonna make me come. But I appreciate it always, and yeah, we'll continue next week, and I'm excited to get through this. I man, again, what I would have paid to hear Alan Mueller read the Master List of Logical Fallacies, but but I think that whoever is listening is getting a lot from this, and because the epiphanies that you go through are the same that the listeners are too, and it's helping by having someone articulate exactly what they're going through as they're reading it. So, especially reading it for the first time. So there really couldn't be a better time to do it, and I'm grateful that you made the brave decision um, to have this be broadcast to read it with me. Despite not knowing exactly where it's going, but you did have reason because we did the first four, and that convinced you that it was a good idea. So it wasn't without reason. You did have reason for it. And that's also why I didn't ask you to record it until we read a few of them first, because I did think that you'd be more apprehensive if we didn't read a couple first before you understood the value of them.
Yeah, no, it's been really good. Happy you orchestrated it the way that you did.
Yeah, awesome. All right, I'll see you next week. Bring a notebook for real.
I will. I will.
Awesome. All right, I'll see you. Bye bye.
Goodbye.